Okay, let's go live. Okay, welcome everybody. And I guess you could say Shabbat Shalom, happy Passover, whatever, on the eve of the Passover as it begins to get dark as commanded on the 14th day of the first month at evening, we shall celebrate the Passover. And I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to it. We've got, what do we got here? 6 other folks in the house. It's great to have a gathering, a convocation, and welcome everybody, both here and wherever you are in the world. A lot of folks that are going to this. I know I've got some folks that are over on the West Coast, 2 or 3 time zones. You're going to see this a little later. When you get home from work and everything, I'll send you the link. Welcome. Join us and pretend that you are right here with us. And hopefully that's the way the Spirit moves it through and does what we want to do. So what we're going to do, and let me get set up here. And wow, look at all the people. Again, welcome, welcome. Welcome, family. And I've got everybody else set up. They can't see the screen. I should have a screen turned around where you guys can all see the screen and everything here and do that. So if you're curious of what I'm reading, you can come around back here and take a look at it, okay? All the scripture, and I can send this out to you if you want to go back through the stuff later on. So, welcome family, Passover's here. Greeting, shalom to all. Join us as we begin the Mikra HaKodesh, the Holy Convocation. Please have ready the following items. I sent this out over social media and tried to do it. We've got the stuff here. The matzah, of course, whether you use the square crackers that are store-bought, you make your own, you know, some good tortillas that are rolled, whatever you happen to have, but some matzah. The more, the bitter herb. We use horseradish. It doesn't have to be horseradish. You could use wasabi if you want to use wasabi, go ahead. Or whatever works. I know the one year we used some of the leaves off the moringa because they were real bitter at that time of the year. It was dry. Spring greens, this is something that I threw in there just for another visual to remind us that it's the spring of the year. This is when these spring festivals are set. Something sweet, you could use cinnamon and sugar if you want. What we want to do is partake of the matzah in 2 separate occasions, and you'll see why as we go through this, but get something sweet. Some cherry-set, like we have the apples and honey and nut mix. You could have your favorite jelly or jam or whatever you want to, marmalade if you want to, whatever. If anybody still eats marmalade, I'm sure they do, right? I don't. Maybe I haven't tried the right one. Favorite wine or grape juice, whichever way you want to go with it. Wine or grape juice is fine. Just have one of those available. The command, and here's where we get into this. Now, the way I want to do this, and the way I was up till like 11 o'clock last night, putting this all together and setting it up. We're going to have part of the service tonight, and my dear wife asked me, she asked, okay, how long are you going to go tonight? I said, well, I promise to keep it under the time that a normal Orthodox Seder would run. Now that would keep us here normally till at least midnight. So I'm going to get you out way before then, okay? Way before then. But we've got probably a half hour worth, but this is part of the command. And we're going to read the command together now. In this Leviticus 12:2, and the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month will be the beginning of months for you. It will be the first month of the year for you. It is the Lord's Passover. For I shall pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both male, man, and beast, and I shall execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be for you as a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I shall pass over you, and the plague will not be upon you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. So here we're seeing the command to get together, the time of the year, it's all set, what's going to happen, the significance of this, the final plague. We're going to go through that as well. And then here again, Leviticus 23:4, these are the appointed seasons of the Lord, the holy convocation. In Hebrew, we call them Moedim, okay? A lot of people misconstrue because it says in the King James, these are the feasts of the Lord. Even though this is a dinner, it is not a feast day, and it's not a whole day. It is one event. It is a gathering together. It's a memorial service, if you will, that includes some emblems. You don't have to have a big meal as long as you partake of the matzah and the bitter herb as commanded. And you go through the account of the Exodus out of Egypt. And that's what we're going to do. Deuteronomy 16:1, observe the month of Aviv, which is the first month, what we're in right now, and keep the Passover of the Lord. For in the month of Aviv, the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. Therefore, you will sacrifice the Passover to the Lord your God from the flock of the herd in the place which the Lord will choose to place his name there. You will eat no leavened bread with it. Now, that's one of the reasons that we don't have the lamb here. You can have lamb, that's fine. Just don't mistake and call it the Pesach. It's not the Pesach because it wasn't taken to Jerusalem to be killed in the manner prescribed in Torah. And so we got to get away from that. And that's why a lot of Seders, we kind of get away from the lamb. So there's no mix up. You don't want to spiritualize it. It's meat at that point because it wasn't done in the prescribed manner. Sometimes there's an object lesson. Sometimes we actually keep the commands by not keeping the commands. And this is one of those cases where it's commanded to do it, but we can't do it properly. So we're actually better off not doing it and getting the blessing instead of bringing a curse. Now, the signs given to Moses, Exodus 4:1. And Moses answered and said, but look, they will not believe me or heed my voice, for they will say, the Lord has not appointed you. And the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a staff. And he said, cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground and it became a snake. And Moses fled from before it. Actually, in the Hebrew says he recoiled from it. And the Lord said to Moses, put forth your hand and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand and he caught it, and it became a staff in his hand, so that they may believe that the Lord their God and the God of their fathers, God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Now, what we see setting up, and I'm going to take a little different way around the memorial service because I think it's important. Number one, I don't want to read too much in. We did the communion service last night, and we partook of the bread and the wine, the body and the blood of Messiah, as he suggested. Again, some people get with me, it's not a command, but we were told by Yeshua, this do in remembrance of me, okay? However you want to read that. But we're asked to remember. In this case, we're commanded to keep the Passover. And part of that is to recount the story. Remember, how do you remember without going through the details? So that's what we do. And the way I want to go about this, there's usually a Haggadah, you know, and it's a set traditional Passover Seder that most of our Jewish brothers and sisters are going to be doing. A lot of Messianics are doing it. Some Christians will follow it, and they'll try to sprinkle as much Jesus in it as they can without understanding that it's really two separate events, but combined into one. And if we dilute it all down to one event, the feeling that I'm getting is, I've been thinking about this over the last couple of weeks to prepare for this, is that we do a disservice to each component of this spring festival set. We have the Last Supper, the communion of our Lord Jesus. Great. Now we have the Passover, which is more about a national identity, a unity among the whole, both tribes. Yeah, I know Judah doesn't have Messiah right now. We have Messiah, and we're trying to get back to Torah and the covenant. Many of us are way far down the road. Some of us just have Jesus and that's all they want. So what we want to try to do is use this as a national identity. If you are believers in Messiah and you've taken hold of the everlasting covenant, as those folks are described in Revelation, these are they that keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Yeshua. We should have a national identity with our heritage, because we can go back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as well as our brothers of Judah. And that's what this Passover is all about, is the identity, the national. We're part of a collective. It's not Jews and Christians. Now it's us in Messiah. So I want to look at this. What was happening with the signs, not just the plagues, that's a normal part of the Seder, not just the plagues and what was going on, but what were the signs? And what was so great about what the Lord did through Moses, and how they delivered? And that's what we're going to get into. And that's what I'm excited about. Kept me up way late, but it was good, because I think you're going to get a couple of ahas through this, as I did last night. Exodus 4. And the Lord said to him further, now put your hand into the bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. And he said, put your hand into your bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom and plucked it out of his bosom, and beheld, it was turned again like his other flesh. And it will be, if they will not believe you, either obey the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. And it will happen, if they will not believe these two signs to obey your voice, that you will take out of the water of the river, pour it upon dry land, and the water which you take out of the river will become blood upon the dry land. So we've got three signs. We've got the sign of the rod that turned to the snake. We've got the leprous hand when he put it in and it came out white, and then put it back in, it changed back, and pouring out the water out of the Nile that turned to blood. To continue in Exodus 4, verse 29, and Moses and Aaron went together and gathered together all the elders of the children of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord has spoken to Moses, and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. Catch that. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the children of Israel, and that he had looked upon their affliction, then they bowed their heads and worshiped. Now I've got a couple of questions. Why did the people believe? Were they amazed at the magic tricks that Moses performed? We'll see that the magicians in Egypt, in Pharaoh's consort, could do the same thing. So what's the big deal? Parlor tricks, right? Or was there something in the signs that spoke to their hearts, something that only God could know? And I want to be very careful here and have you pay close attention. There are three things that got their attention when they saw what Moses did. How many of you have ever had, you've asked God, I need a sign, I need an answer, I need something, and then boom, somebody walks up to you and it's there, and you go, You couldn't have known that other than the Lord God has told you. I've had it happen to me. I've done it for other people and been that catalyst, that vehicle that delivered the sign, delivered the confirmation, whatever it was. And that's what we've got to look here. Moses was the delivery boy. Aaron did the signs. Moses stood back. You know the agreement they had. Well, I can't talk. Well, Aaron will talk for you. So that happened. There was something in those signs, something very special. The deception, we're going to start to take a look now at the deception of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Exodus 1. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiply and grew very strong, and the land was filled with them. Now, when you look at the root Hebrew on that, it actually gives the sense that they swarmed like insects, like locusts, like flies, like a pit full of snakes, like livestock. They were just multiplying all over the place. It was a derogatory statement. And if you look at this passage as coming from the Egyptian side point of view, it wasn't from God's point of view or the Hebrew children. This was the Egyptian talking. Man, they multiplied. We used to say they breed like rabbits. But that's a derogatory statement, meaning that it kind of brings them down a little bit, right? Now, on to the next. Now, a new king rose over Egypt who did not know Joseph, and he said to his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal wisely. Let us deal with cunning and craft, some of the interpretations say, lest they multiply, and would happen that when there would be a war, that they could even join our enemies, fight against us, and then leave with them. Now think about that. What was the concern of Pharaoh? Fear was used to cast a disparaging light. Now I want you to listen. Those who have eyes, open them up. Fear was used to cast a disparaging light on the children of Israel. And loss of economic gain. They were afraid they were going to take over. They were afraid for no reason. They showed no signs of being hostile, no signs of taking over, but something crept in. Some spirit took Pharaoh over and brought fear in. Now, haven't we seen a little bit of that in society today? Somebody's a little different, and I'm afraid that they're putting our security at risk. So we've got to mandate some things, and I'm going to stop right there. Same spirit that went on there is going on worldwide today. And loss of economic gain. Pharaoh was worried about losing cheap labor. They made his food. They took care of things. They were building stuff. They were part of the economic engine of Egypt. And if they were to go to war, number one, we'd lose. Number two, we've lost all their economic basis. So it was a deal. I've got a note here at the bottom. Pharaoh didn't want to lose his labor force. A god, little g, needs workers to build his edifices, right? It's basically where we're at. The Pharaoh was considered a god king. Okay, and you've got to understand that as this story goes through, because it's very important to get that context. How to get away with murder. In Exodus 1:15, the midwives were called in to kill the babies at birth. like they were stillborn. As soon as they come out, if it's a male child, kill it. However, they were going to do that. I don't want to be too graphic here, but you get the point. But keep that in mind. Kill the babies at birth, the male children, trying to slow the population growth down, because they thought that they would give them hard labor, that they would increase their task, they would enslave them, and that would slow them down. But we see the report that they multiplied more. So they were a pretty happy family. And Israel was growing. Very similar account when you look at I think it was Isaac and Laban, when he went in and getting his two wives, got the first wife that he really didn't want, and then he had to work a little longer for the right wife he really wanted. And there's a very similar, if you want to study it out sometime, very similar storylines between the two here. And that's why an Armenian from wherever sent to kill me is usually in the Haggadah, okay? But we're not going to go into that right now. Now, it didn't work because the midwives had some virtue left in them. The midwives said, we can't kill these babies. They probably killed some, quite a few, until their conscience really started to burn on them. You see this, in the abortion clinics today. You go for a while and then finally, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do it. Something broke. So they disobeyed Pharaoh's order. Then they reported to Pharaoh and fed his preconceived idea about the children of Israel. And they reported to him that, well, you know what, Pharaoh, we get there and they've already had the baby. They're like livestock. They just have the kid and go right back to work. That's kind of the feel that I'm sure Pharaoh got from it, and it fueled his mistrust and his preconceived idea. Now, Exodus 1:22. Convince your people, again, how to get away with murder, convince your own people to turn on the Hebrew neighbors. This was a big thing. And in verse 22, and Pharaoh charged all his people, every son that is born you will cast into the river alive, and every daughter you will save alive. So what was up with that? How could he convince, and we're going to look at this a little more detail. How could Pharaoh, he didn't send the police force, he didn't send the armies, kind of like we've seen recently in Canada, where they sent the police force to disband a peaceful protest. No, he got his own people. Think back about what happened even lately. Rat on your neighbors. It's okay. We need to have everybody police each other. And we need to know who's not conforming. Sound familiar? Again, same spirit back in play in the world today. So how do you get away with murder? Have someone else do it for you and hide the evidence. The Nile tells no stories. When they dumped those babies into the Nile, of course there's crocodiles, of course there's current, of course everything else. It was like nothing ever happened. And when the Hebrew folks come in and said, wait a minute, my neighbor just grabbed our child and they're gone. And Pharaoh's going to go, what are you talking about? Where's your proof? Where's the dead body? It's not there. He's getting away with murder. He's got, I don't know nothing about it. How many times we've seen that happen throughout governments? Yeah, it's sad but true. Let me see, make sure I didn't. Yep, there we go. So let's examine the signs in detail. The rod into the snake. Rod or staff equals tribe. When you look it up in the Strong's, you look it up in the Hebrew dictionary, one of the meanings is tribe. Okay, keep that in the back of your mind as we go through the story. The snake is a symbol of deception and murder. Has been, perhaps they remember great-great-grandpa talking about the account of what happened in the garden to Adam and Eve. And that deception, that snake came in. And that's where we're at today. Maybe, maybe not. They have been far removed from that. But I'm just, what if? Now, remember how Pharaoh convinced the people that the Hebrews swarmed and they're basically not human. And they are more cunning. We can look at the scripture there. If you read through that Exodus 1, it talks about how he said, these people are smarter than us. They will outwit us. They will go to war and then they will leave and we'll lose everything. We can't have that happening because basically they're not human. Okay. They're more cunning. They'll outsmart you. The Hebrews cannot be trusted. They're not one of us. So it's okay for us to enslave them and treat them like livestock because they're really not quite human. Have you ever heard of a situation where that's come into play? Yeah. This is what happened in Nazi Germany too. And I can go over and on and on and on throughout history. The same tactics, you belittle a population, you convince somebody that they're not quite human, and Darwinism plays right into the enemy's hands because after all, we're all from apes and monkeys and we evolved out of the primordial ooze instead of created specifically. And I love it that science now has found that we were created just as we are today in a moment in time. Bang, there we were. There was no evolution. We were created in God's image. And that's important. Now, the other thing you got to remember with the signs, Pharaoh was seen as a God king. Now let's examine the signs again. The leprous hand. The white skin would be perceived as a sign of death. The fact that the dead hand would come from his bosom would indicate something close to the heart. Jehovah was in fact telling the people that he has seen the death of the stillborn children at the hands of the midwives. Get a hold of what's going on. They identify the snake, the deception, the thing that's going on. They also identified that this rod actually resembles or speaks of the tribe. Go to Ezekiel, take a rod or a stick for Ephraim and one for Manasseh, put them together in your hand. Where do we get that? We go clear back. It talks about the tribe, the people. Okay, and the deception. Understand that when Moses threw that stick down, it didn't really turn into a snake. It was an illusion of a snake. Not really a snake. And that's what we got to understand. If you can push the illusion, which is what magic does, then you can make people think that it's real when it's not. So finally, the water into blood. Take the water from the Nile, pour it out. When it hits the ground, important to remember, it will turn to blood. This will also play out at the end of the story. Jehovah is telling them that he has seen the innocent blood in the river from the children that were murdered. He knows it all. And more importantly, they know he knows. So the 10 plagues. Now, we're not going to go through here. The traditional Haggadah would have you take your plate and a little bit of wine, and you would dip your finger and do the 10 spots. We're just going to leave it go with this slide. And remember the 10 plagues. We had the water that turned into blood. Right away, Moses, not just in front of the group of elders from Israel to make them believe, but he was exposing Pharaoh's murder to everyone, to the entire nation, saying God knows that the innocent blood shed in the Nile is known to everyone. The frogs, the gnats, or the no-see-ums, the flies, the swarming creatures. Yeah, God heard that comment too. The disease on the livestock. You want to treat my people like livestock? You're worried about losing your economic base? Boom, tell you what, they're gone. They're like a rash that just won't go away. I imagine somebody in Pharaoh's company probably said that. Why do you think the unhealable boils came up? Hail and fire, locust, again, the swarm, the darkness. Some of these were going right at, as he said before, the gods of Egypt. Horus, the god of the underworld, Osiris, Isis, Ra himself, the darkness. Okay, Ra, I'm going to turn it dark in the middle of the day and you won't be able to see anything. What's your God going to do then? So our God was nailing their gods and everything that they have claimed that the children of Israel were to have done. Very interesting. The purpose in the plagues, couple of purposes: to humble the Egyptians, to show Jehovah's power to all, to separate the children of Israel. Now, remember, this is an interesting point, and this is going to play out later on in a prophetic sense. As the first few went on, the children in Goshen had the same plagues going. They had the frogs, they seen the lice, and man, this is getting out of control. And then it stopped. And all of a sudden, when it was dark everywhere in Egypt, except Goshen had a spotlight. The livestock all died everywhere except in Goshen. There were things that went on, the boils that were painful and unhealable for everybody except the Hebrew children. Our God has a way of getting his point across who's his and who ain't. I know, bad grammar, but you get the point. To uncover the truth about the lies and deception of Pharaoh, every sin is exposed, every lie revealed, and most importantly, they know that God knows. And that's the biggest thing. The jig is up. Israel's seeing that God's hitting every point, everything that the Egyptians came in and pounded on. Every negative word, every negative thought, every chance to enslave them is now being hit by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who they're now reattaching to. Okay, and see, this is where I get excited. The final plague, the death angel. Remember the command, take a lamb and kill it, roast it with fire. It's tied up, if you get the picture, this lamb was tied up with his head still on, with all his feet and legs, his tail was there. He was, it says the entrails. Now, I don't know the exact interpretation, whether they left some parts and took out others, but suffice to say, it was pretty well intact. On a pole, roasted over a fire, basically tied up with his head, what? In a fetal position. Keep that thought in mind. Kind of looked like it was in a fetal position. An important thought here. You'll see where I'm going in a minute. Take the blood from the lamb and put it on the door outside. Mark the sides, the top, down the other side. You get some at the threshold. More the merrier at this point, but mark the door, right? Mark the door. And we're going to see this play out too. And it's going to be interesting that when you look at it from the inside of the house, we've always looked at it, the death angel's coming by and goes, oop, blood, passes on, passes over. Let's look at it from the inside of the house. It says, go in and shut the door and do not come out. Eat it, the Passover, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, which is what we're going to do in a little while. Be ready to go. Have your shoes on, your staff in your hand, ready to march out. Pack your bags. You're going tonight. They went in as slaves. They came out. Now, I want you to get this. They came out of the door born again as free children. That's very important. Children of the Most High God, redeemed and delivered. Let's look at it from the inside of the house. We sacrificed the lamb. We took the blood, we put it on the doorpost so the death angel would stay outside and not come into our house. We went in as an enslaved people under the rule and demand of a tyrant, an ungodly tyrant. After God went through, we came out liberated as free people to go worship our God as he will command us. Moreover, we're going to go out and they're going to ask us to leave and they're going to give us parting gifts. Wasn't that one of the concerns of Pharaoh right along, was if they go to war with us, they're going to leave? That's why he's been trying so hard to keep everybody there. And why it will play out again and again. God was using this. He hardened his heart, but Pharaoh didn't want to let anybody go anyways, because he knew the cost to his economy. He couldn't sustain his lifestyle and lose the Hebrew children. Who's going to plant the garden? Who's going to water? Who's going to take care of? On and on and on. So get that. That came to me, and it was a revolutionary way of looking at that. We were born again, the doorway, the bloody matrix that we came through, call it the birth canal, coming out of the dark house into a new life. Very interesting. Now, the matzah. From the bread of affliction, and normally they call it the bread of affliction in most Hebrew Haggadahs, but the bread of affliction ate with the Pesach to the bread of liberation or abundance. This was a big aha moment when Prophet Steve and I a couple of years ago were sitting around, we thought about this and we studied it out. That unleavened bread that they took from their kneading tables and everything that was trying to rise, and they said, we don't have time, just go ahead and bake it real quick, we got to go, the boat's leaving, it's time to go. That was the bread of liberation. It was the bread of abundance, because when they went out, they took everything they had, plus they spoiled the Egyptians. They took all the riches that they were going to need to build a sanctuary in the wilderness for Jehovah. Crucial pivot point. They were eating regular bread all up until the Lord says, look, I want you to take unleavened bread tonight. It's different. It wouldn't be such a big deal if they ate unleavened bread all the time. This was special for this night. And they were going to go out into liberation. The midnight call, Exodus 12:30. And Pharaoh got up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, get up, get out from among my people, both you and the children of Israel, go, serve the Lord as you have said. Also take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people so that they would send them out of the land in haste, for they said, we will all be dead men. Remember what Pharaoh tried to instill, and this is a huge point for all of us. What you sow, you will reap. What were they sowing? What did Pharaoh sow into the people? They multiply like rabbits. They're not really human. We need to enslave them, or they're going to take us over. They're going to fight against us, and then they'll leave and they'll bankrupt us. What happened when they marched out of Egypt? Exactly what happened. What they called happened. Did it have to be that way? No, it didn't have to be that way, but it was that way. The other side of it, I asked the Father, and I said, why, if you knew all this was going to come down, how is it, and why would you stand by when those innocent children were being brutally murdered? What was going on? Of course, the same could ask today. Why is the abortion clinic still brutally murdering children? And you know, the thought quickly came, when people are in trouble, they'll turn to me. Remember the original thing that the Father said to Moses? I have heard the cry of my people. That cry, they had to get to the place where they cried out and said, Father, you got to save us. This is gone. This is too much. This is now too much. When they came to turn and seek the Lord, salvation, deliverance has come. That's what we've all got to do. We've all got to get to a point where we have to seek him, and then he can come in. He's not going to barge in. He's not going to bust his way in and say, you know what, you're messing this all up. Let me take over. He's not that backseat driver, but he will respond to the cry of his people. Very important point. We've got to remember that. The pain of change, we've all heard it. How bad did it have to be? That's the other thing to remember. How bad did it have to be? Because remember, the children of Israel, until this new guy took over, had it pretty good in Goshen. They were thriving. Their herds were blessed. Their families were blessed. They had everything they needed. What would it take to convince them they need to go to the wilderness and follow a God that they really hadn't known? Think about it. It had to get to a point where they really had to meet face to face and understand who this living God was. And that's what it took. Now, is that all of it? I don't know. You pray. You ask the Father. See what he says. The road less traveled. Verse 17, and it was when Pharaoh had sent the people out that God did not lead them through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near, for God said, perhaps the people will change their mind when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up armed out of the land of Egypt. They went out, instead of taking the close route, he led them basically to a funnel one last time. And I told you before that something's going to play out in the end. This is where this gets real interesting. The final chase. And I shall harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will follow after them. And I shall be honored by Pharaoh and by his entire army. So the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And they did so. And it was told of the king of Egypt that the people fled. And the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this? That we have let Israel go from serving us. And he made his chariots ready and took his people with him. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. And they were greatly afraid. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. And they said to Moses, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness because there were no graves in Egypt? Why have you dealt like this with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? You know, I had a thought earlier this afternoon about this passage. You know, it didn't have to get to that point. At some point early on, they made a decision to comply to every demand that Pharaoh sent to them. Where were the leaders that stood up and said, whoa, time out, Pharaoh? No, we're not going to do it. We know we're more than you. We know we outnumber you. We know that we can take you out. We're going to negotiate this. But they didn't do it. Remember the comment I made earlier in the week on one of the social media posts? The opposite of courage is conformity, compliance. It's not cowardice. It's conforming to what everybody wants. We just kind of go along. Well, we don't want to upset the cart, you know. Let's just status quo. Sometimes you've got to man up, woman up, pull up your big boy britches, your big girl britches, and take a stand. And that's what led this thing to this point. Again, my take, just looking at it from a high level observation. The mikveh in the Red Sea. We're getting close to the end, folks. And Moses said to the people, do not be in awe, stand still, see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. The Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will see them again no more forever. The Lord will fight for you, and you will hold your peace. Again, he didn't want them talking doubt and unbelief. He had something to do. He needed Moses to have full control of all the power and direct the flow of this thing, because the negative, remember when Yeshua said, okay, everybody out of here. I can't do what I got to do with all this unbelief and negativity. So he cleared the room. Sometimes you got to do that. Our words have so much power. And the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward and lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And the children of Israel will go through the midst of the sea on dry ground. Now, isn't it interesting that even Moses, you know, and we get into this, we see it a few times play out through the rest of the narrative as they're going through the wilderness, that he kind of starts whining a little bit. Even the best of us can let our flesh get in the way. Moses had a face-to-face experience with God in the burning bush, talked to him, had direct contact, saw all the miracles, felt the energy, the anointing flow through him, and then got to the Red Sea and went, now what are we going to do? It looks like a dead end. You led us into, and he started to pick up on some of the negativity that the rest of the crowd were doing. There weren't enough graves in Egypt. You had to bring us out here. Please understand, separate yourselves. This is a side rabbit trail. Separate yourself from negative people and negative talk. Your life's going to go a whole lot better if you do. Now, the final retribution. And the Egyptians pursued and went after them in the midst of the sea, and all Pharaoh's horses and his chariots and his horsemen. And it was that in the morning watch, that the Lord looked at the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire. Isn't that interesting? He was in the pillar of fire, looked at him, and caused confusion with the army of the Egyptians. And he took off their chariot wheels. So they drove them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord is fighting against the Egyptians." They knew they were in trouble. Some things started happening that weren't coincidences, right? Let's continue. The waters returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, and the entire army of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. They remained not so much as one of them, but the children of Israel walked on dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians, and the people revered the Lord and believed, here we go again, and his servant Moses. Remember what I said, that sign. He had the sign of the hand coming in that represented the death of the children, the special next to the heart. The sign of the snake, the deception that went on in Egypt, and that the tribe would swallow up the Egyptians. Oh, we didn't get to that. Remember when the magicians come in and they said, "Oh, we can do that." And they took their two staves, and Moses' snake ate the other two. That was a sign that our tribe will consume you. Be careful. Now, what about the water turning to blood when it hit the shore? Isn't it interesting that all the chariots and all of Pharaoh's army was spread out on the shore? The water turned to blood when it hit the shore. All that death, all that destruction of Pharaoh's army was spread out in front of them. And they remembered that God has a way of repaying. And they blessed the Lord in it. Now, consider this. I wonder if the number of Egyptians that were killed in the plagues and the Red Sea would equal the number of children murdered by Pharaoh. Do you think God's that exact? Oh, I probably bet it was. I'll bet you it was an exact right down to the person. An eye for an eye, perhaps? Why did God wait when he knew this was happening? And I have heard their cry. Their prayers move God. We talked about that. It sometimes takes trauma and calamity to make people want to change. The pain of change. Remember that? The memorial. Okay, here's where we can get ready the matzah. This will give you a chance to get everything you need. We'll need like 2 little pieces of matzah, or you can break one and do that. We're getting the wine out now. We'll give you a few minutes if you need to go to the bathroom break. We'll take just a quick few minutes here and get set up. I need some wine. I need to have a drink because I'm a little dry. And we're going to go ahead and start the memorial. So get on your plate a piece of green, a salad or something like that. Go outside and get a blade of grass. I don't care. Something, okay? A dandelion. You could get a dandelion. Well, they're not quite up yet here. And I know the Southern Command don't have dandelions. So improvise, right? And then we're going to get you can come in. Oh, come on. Somebody's camera shy here. Oh yeah, fill it up. Only one time. See, we don't have the 4 glasses, so I can drink the full glass now. Okay. And then get your sweet and your horseradish on there. And we're going to go ahead and observe the command to partake of this. Okay. So I'm waiting for a cue. Everybody, they're still pouring wine. And that, excuse me a second while I get a drink of water. Wet the whistle. So I don't know about you. I hope that, I seen some nodding heads and the folks that were here going, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Wow, that's interesting. I hope that all of you have got a new perspective on what this was all about. And this is a time of national identity. And I think that's the thing I want to bring to the table tonight more than anything else, is that this is a way that we can be part of the nation of Israel, the covenant people. And we should absolutely desire to be one household. This is the problem that we get into with those are the Jews, those are the Jewish feasts, these are the Christian holidays. It's division, and a house divided cannot stand. And I think this is really the intent that the Lord God had for all of this, was that, you know what, he wanted to make sure that we had something, some history, some participation, and it shows victory and liberation to the household of faith, right? Are we ready to go? Pretty close? No, not quite. They're still serving stuff up. So I'll just kind of chat a little bit more and do that, giving you guys plenty of time to get around everything you need to get around. Let me do this. See, now, I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to walk over here. That is, yeah, there we go. Hopefully it doesn't slide off. Your plate could look something like that. Again, we don't have the Pesach lamb. As believers, we partook of the body and the blood last night. We did that in the communion. That's our salvation. That's our deliverance. This is a remembrance of a little different story and a national unity, again, as I said. Okay, are we ready? Okay. So, I haven't got much room right here. So what I want to do, take a piece of the matzah that you've got and put a little horseradish on it. And now when you've got that, get your leafy green vegetable. And remember that it's in the spring of the year that we set these festivals, right? Partake. And then the matzah with the bitter herb. Remember that we went in as slaves, we're coming out as free. Now grab your cup. Don't drink it all in one gulp. We need 2 drinks out of this. The first one, remembering the blood of the innocent that was shed by tyrants, driving fear and for economic gain. Our people have suffered throughout generations at the hand of the enemy. Remember. Okay, put that down, get another piece of matzah. This time, with your matzah, put your sweet thing on it. Whatever it is, jelly, marmalade, whoever. I'm using some of this nutmeg. I love this. Of course, the apples and the nuts and everything, I kind of like it. Remember, this is the blood, as the bread of liberation. This is the bread of abundance as we went out. Partake. Not bad, even if you had a little horseradish on your spoon like I did. Oopsie. Wow, that's good. Now, the cup. To new beginnings. Remember how we came forth. We went in as slaves. We came out as free men, free to worship, free to take the covenant of our Lord God, free to worship him, free to take hold and have a relationship with him. Partake. Boy, you got to like that. In closing, we remember this Passover as instructed in Torah. Certainly, we can see overtones of Messiah through all the history, and it's good to think of that. But, and again, I stress, nothing wrong with reading Messiah into these festivals because he was the fulfilling of all of it. But let's not take away from what the national unity, some of these different celebrations have a different purpose. And if we try to sugarcoat them with something else, we lose some of the heritage and some of the meaning. All right. Passover is about a national identity. We said that. It's about deliverance of God's people as promised to Abraham. It's about rebirth of a nation. It's about sin and what happens when someone mistreats the children of God. Remember the Lord said this, and he gave a blessing and he told Abraham. Now I want you to read it. I'm going to turn back to that page. I will curse them that curse you. Actually, the intent there that the Lord had was, I will curse, I will utterly destroy them that talk badly about you. There's a whole nuance there that the Lord says, I will bless them that even give you a kind word. I will show them abundance. And I will curse, I will utterly destroy for even a bad thought. That's how much the Lord God loves and wants the relationship, and he protects his children. Thank you. That ends our service. We're going to keep the camera open here in a little bit. I'm going to turn some things around so that we can see. We've got the dinner table. We're going to have dinner. We're going to open it up and share everybody next year in Jerusalem, right? The old saying. Shalom, everybody, and thank you for participating. Amen. Amen.